Hello, and welcome to Crafting a Revolution, the podcast. My name is Katie Freeman, and I am one of your hosts. Every Wednesday and Friday, we bring you interviews with makers of all kinds from all over the world. Today's guest is Andrea de Leon, who is a scientific glassblower, that for sure. As well as like a metal worker, metalsmith, sculptor, artist. She really just does so much stuff and knows so much about the ways different materials move, which is pretty awesome. And we kind of get into that conversation around the curiosity of how different materials move differently. And that's as much as I'm giving you with this intro. So I know you're going to enjoy the interview, but before we get on into it with Andrea, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the patrons over on Patreon. So thank you so much, Lee at Lee Runyon, Annette 513 Woodworks, Katie Thompson, Women of Woodworking, Kevin Lefty's Woodshop, Christy Twisted Twine, Jeremy Spees, Sammy Go Sammy Lee, Rachel Moody Mix, Bonnie Toolmom Bonnie, toolmomstore.com, Laura Oakley Soap Company, Brandy Studio Obey, Lee the Rainbow Carver, Ellen Little Bear Furniture, and Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you all so very much for your continued support, helping to produce 2 episodes a week every week. If you would like to get your name added to this list, you certainly can. Just head on over to patreon.com/crafting a revolution. No matter what tier level you pick, your name will get added to the list and you will be thanked at the top of the episode every episode. And with no further ado, let's head on into the interview with Andrea. Well, I mean, if you're good, we can kind of just get started.
Sure. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Well, I like to start by asking my guests to introduce themselves. So would you do that for me?
Sure. My name's Andrea de Leon. It's kind of hard to describe what I do. I guess I'm a fabricator, mostly metalsmithing. I teach jewelry fabrication, but I've also been known to do some scientific glass blowing and sculpture. So that's like my main interests.
Okay. So maybe I need to understand when you said scientific glass blowing. What's that versus I guess, I don't know, other kinds of glass blowing?
So it's like definitely a niche in the glass world that's like a little less known, and I'm trying to be more of an advocate for it. It's more specialized for basically making the apparatuses for researchers and developers. So the machinery is different. The types of glass is different than what you're used to seeing. It's not like that blown away show at all. It's definitely more technical and like combines pretty much everything that I like, which is machining and like torches and really precise, specs and all that. Okay. Crazy machinery.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And I'm sure I will dive in and ask more questions about that as we go along. But I want to start kind of broad and ask like what's your story starting as like baby Andrea and getting into what you do now?
Yeah, it was anything but a straight path for sure. It's like I still feel like I'm all over the place. But essentially, when I was younger, I was always like attracted to anything that was like design, architecture, art in general. I came from a really conservative Mexican family, very supportive, but working with your hands and getting dirty was not acceptable, right? So me just being a contrarian, I dove in head first. I was a bit of a tomboy. So always like getting dirty, riding ATVs, just wanted to go against the grain a little bit. And I think that's where I got the grit to just start figuring it out. And then I actually ended up going to SCAD for a couple of years, starting in architecture, and moved closer to industrial design.
Mm.
And once I figured that, I saw the program at UT, which is a little more all-encompassing. So it was anything from woodworking, sculpture, metals, ceramics, painting, photography, lithography.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to choose, basically curate what classes you took. And I feel like that attributed a lot to just kind of being a Jill of all trades, and being able to grasp different materials quickly. Because basically it's like, if you know the physics of how things are constructed and basically the limitations and benefits of a material, you can kind of figure it out. But yeah, in school, I was definitely attracted to metalsmithing. So non-ferrous, small metals. It was more like art metal. So it was like that weird, like couture, conceptual, crazy pieces that go on the body. I really like that direct connection to the human form, and like how it questions like how you move, how it restricts it. I wasn't limited necessarily to the materials. I wasn't limited to using silver, copper, or brass. I could use wood, plastic, glass. So that's why I stuck with it, especially because it's just so highly technical. And I attribute getting all my other jobs after college to knowing like just that I prefer precision and problem solving that metalsmithing gave me.
So, I mean, it sounds like, you're mentioning like basically like material science and stuff. So it sounds like you have maybe a little bit of like kind of like analytical brain going on there with understanding like science and math and chemistry. And I kind of feel like I wish I had known you in college so I could have done better in my material sciences class, probably.
Yeah, I was definitely, in high school, I like got 100 in physics and stuff like that. Like I was definitely more of a math man, which is why I started out in architecture. I can't really draw, but I can draw with with mathematically, absolutely. And I guess that's why a lot of my sculpture somewhat reflects that. But yeah, I think like, especially with metals, again, like I had to like learn all this, but there's no way around it. Like you need to know when your metal is work hardened, when it's annealed, like how to get it to move, how to like get it to make it do what you want, right? There's no way around not knowing what's happening with materials. So that actually made me question every other material that I used after that. So
yeah, I predominantly work with wood. Wood and resin are the two material, mediums that I work with. And I definitely remember getting like fascinated when I finally had a class that talked about like wood movement and just like stuff like that, and not like it made me understand things in a different way.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. And then the same with resin, like it's a completely different type of material, and it also depends, like there's a bunch of different types of resin that you can use out there.
Yeah. And a lot of variables, right?
Yeah,
that affect the catalyzation of
yeah,
it. You know, I always found it interesting that a lot of those like, smooth on products and stuff like that that you pour actually depend a lot on platinum and stuff, that like metals essentially to catalyze. So that's another little, I can nerd out on anything, but yeah, resin actually, acts completely different from wood, to my understanding, and how they sand is at a different rate. Something you have to pay attention to.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's like been my fascination with resin is, I have screwed it up more often than I have like gotten it right. And it's a lot of trial and error. And it's unfortunately expensive when you screw it up to the level I have screwed
Oh yeah,
it.
I understand. Yeah.
But I definitely like, I feel like I've always had, I am very intrigued by both uh, glass and different types of metalworking. Um, I've just not really, but outside of like some minimal welding, I've never really, messed around with it at all. And I think it's probably because I find it intimidating because of how much information you have to like understand to be successful with it. It's not,
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I don't
mean,
know. I feel like woodworking like has such a broad range that you can be successful pretty easily with it. Versus like to your point, if you don't get something hardened correctly or whatever, it could be catastrophe later on. Like it may look great in the moment, but later on it could have a massive failure. So
yeah, I mean, I feel that way actually about woodworking.
really,
It's so broad to me. And like, it's unforgiving in the fact that like, you have to pay attention to grains and like how it's like, how it's constructed and its strength, right? Like utilizing it in a specific orientation. I mean, again, like I know minimal about it other than, the other basic types of wood construction that I
yeah,
use, I've built a bench before, like,
right.
okay. But so I feel the same way, but I like to teach, like when I do explain to other people how to do things, the whys, not the hows necessarily. Like obviously I'll show you step by step, but I feel like you can problem solve anything if you know the whys. And it sinks in a little bit more, I
Mhm.
think. But it's really just keep your metal clean and make sure the fit up's right, or else you're going to be into. It's just like anything. Like if you do things from like step one correctly, like your life
Mhm.
is going to be a lot easier later on.
Right. Hey, Pond Squad. I would like to give a big shout out and thanks to this week's sponsor, Rockport Works. They offer safety footwear that suits people's occupation and lifestyle by incorporating performance, safety, and style into every shoe and boot. Each shoe features a slip resistant outsole and a toe cap, varying between steel, alloy, and composite. Other features such as electrical hazard and shock protection are also available depending on your safety needs. So Rockport delivers extraordinary technology-based comfort using the latest advances in construction and design to create both modern and classic shoe styles. So whatever the outfit, they've got you covered. Their goal is to support your style, to take you from work to leisure and everything in between. Try Rockport Works for yourself and change the world without changing your shoes. Now, they offered to send me some boots, and I said, hey, look here. I got lots of boots. I got plenty of boots. I really, really, really need a shoe that's going to work for me out in the workshop. Because right now, if I don't feel like wearing my work boots, I'm wearing my tennis shoes. And not only is it hard on the tennis shoes, those aren't really the best to wear protection and safety wise out in the shop. So they sent me a pair of their True Stride work shoes, which are these slip on shoes that have a zipper on them, and they consist of moisture wicking micro mesh liner and a leather upper. And they've got this nice little cushion in the heel that really is helpful for my lower back personally. They have these shoes available in sizes from 6 to 12 in both M and W widths. I went with W because I've got a wide foot. And I'm just going to let you know. So I went ahead and ordered my standard like 8 wides, and they do run a little bit big on me, but I love them even more for that, honestly, because that makes them easier to slip on and off. So I just slip right in, head on out to the garage, do some work, come in, take them off, don't track sawdust all over the house. So it is fantastic. Um, the shoe, besides being super cool and comfy, also meets all ASTM safety standards and requirements. All right, so if you want to try out a pair of the True Stride shoes or any of their other work boots and shoes, head on over to Rockport Works and you can use discount code Freeman 25. That's Freeman, FREEMAN 25 to get 25% off of your purchase at checkout. So take advantage of this super sweet deal for listeners of the pod and head on over and check out Rockport Works. All right, let's head back into the episode.
Yeah.
Have you, I mean, you know, you obviously learned about a lot of this at school, but what portion of it do you feel like has been a little bit of that like trial and error to get to understand how things move and work?
There's a lot. I mean, I'm almost like through what I've been doing this like for a decade now, and I think you're about right. Like, well, I don't know, 50% is kind of close. The R&D phase is real, especially in glass. Like, I know that when I do something, I'm gonna have to like prototype it just because the margin of error is so huge. Now that I got kind of a better grasp of like, because I've spent the time doing all the mistakes, I know I can predict what might go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm a lot more efficient. But like, if you take like the overall arching theme, it's funny because I see a lot of people get discouraged from it, from the failures, but that's when you get really good at problem solving, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a big part of it, but I mean, you wouldn't learn anything otherwise.
Right. Right.
I feel like you kind of have to pay your dues,
you
know? Like literally financially and time wise, you know.
That's what I mean, at least and I think it applies to any kind of making, but that's what I've always said about like the woodworking world is like, even people who have been woodworking for 30, 40 years, I think something still goes wrong. At least one thing still goes wrong with every project. It's just that they've like honed their problem solving skills more than somebody who's only been doing it for like a year or two. Do you feel like that's the same in the medium you work in? It's like something probably is still always going to go wrong, but you've just done a better job at problem solving.
Absolutely. I'll even preempt it like, hey, like when I do this, this is liable to happen, this and this and this, but it's okay. Like, you know, same thing with like, you know, how I can help solve other people's problems. The reason I know how to is because I've had that problem before.
Right.
And like everyone's going to have a different answer too, but I'm almost like, I think that's what stuck out. You interviewed Amanda Russell, a woodworker here in Austin, Texas. Mm-hmm. She's fantastic, but I really enjoyed what she said about like, there's this like respect for the material, like you can do everything right and then it'll still like surprise you. So the stars may be aligned, but something will still kind of, you know, throw you a curveball. But I enjoy that. I enjoy riding the edge and like having to be present and that risk that it takes, that high risk. So I think I'd be very bored if there wasn't that element of risk in what I do.
And is this, I mean, do you get to work in these mediums like full time, like as your full-time job? Is it artist? Is it like fabrication?
So for a long time, I was actually traveling around as like this fabricator for hire. I've worked in Berlin for the Sculptor, in LA for Neptune Glassworks. And like I was actually doing a summer apprenticeship in Chicago doing the scientific glass, but COVID kind of threw a wrench into everything. So that's been put on hold, but I've been trying to move closer to learning, like using those techniques I learned and applying them to my sculptural practice. Okay. So I teach at the Austin Community College. I teach mostly lost wax casting, but I do like anything, jewelry fabrication, stone setting, all that stuff. And then my main bread and butter outside of that is custom knives. Mm-hmm. And on this, like whenever I have like, you know, free time, I'll do the sculpture.
Okay.
So I'm basically always making something.
It just depends on what you're making, like what avenue you're going down. Yeah.
It depends on what materials or equipment really I have access to. That it determines wholeheartedly what my capabilities are. So there are times like when I'm in Chicago, I don't have access to like a heat treating oven and like a grinder and all that. So I just stick with the glass. Sometimes I don't have a forge, so I don't forge. I don't, but I always have to keep my hands busy.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Where is it when you're doing your sculptural work? Is that all at home, like in a home shop space?
Yeah. It's it was because of the shutdown. I was getting stir crazy, and I'd never stayed put long enough to have a shop of my own. So I found a spot that was affordable, and I got a good COVID discount deal situation. But yeah, I finally like threw in my equipment. I even invested in more because I was just like, if I'm going to be stuck here, like I'm going to go all in. So yeah, I do a lot of that stuff. I do the glass and the knives. I recently my boyfriend now shares a shop with me. He also makes knives. So it's like very dusty in there.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. Between the both of us, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, it's nice to have a spot.
So maybe not, you may be not going the route of blown away, but perhaps forged in fire is the is more the
probably, yeah. I mean, even then I'm like, man, the way that I work, it's different. I'm like, you can't make a knife in 3 hours, Heat treating alone takes like 5.
Right.
Yeah, it's fun to watch though. All of those shows are interesting, and I love, also to like the unrealistic expectations of the producers and stuff. Just it's funny,
Well, yeah. I mean, they do a little bit of that just to like they're basically inserting drama by reducing your time, right?
That's the fun part. That's why you watch it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You mentioned talking about growing up that you grew up in a kind of conservative like Mexican household. Like what was that like being the tomboy in that space, and then like hard. What you're doing now?
Oh yeah, it took a while for they've always been supportive, but we're also kind of like, what are you doing? And now they're super proud, and they're very excited, extremely supportive. And but back then, like a lot of the people back home, like the women at least, like they just go to college to find a husband just to get married, and their job is just to pop out babies and like make them tacos, like that's, and they're content with that. Well, some women are at least, but I did not fit that mold. Now looking back, I didn't really fit a lot of like the like normal molds, and I was always trying to find my place, and I finally did when I went to art school. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Like there's other people that are like-minded, all individual but like-minded. They're all hungry to just get after it, and explore and play and express themselves. That's mostly why I do the sculpture, just like trying to externalize like all these weird thoughts that I have. And but yeah,
do you feel like once you got, like you said, all unique individuals once you got to art school, but somewhat like-minded, what do you feel, I guess, what kind of representation do you feel like there was, in similarities of backgrounds and stuff in those spaces?
I guess it just depends on what arena you're in, right? I started out, like in college, at least, it was about half and half, like women and men, and of all different types of backgrounds. Um, but once you start moving into, like, when I started getting more into the trades, like machining and glass blowing, actually, it was mostly male. A lot of fabrication shops here, fortunately, like, some of, like, the set design fabrication shops. I've worked for some companies that designed and fabricated, installed museum exhibits. That was like maybe a quarter of the people were women. And then the rest were, just all, it was such a whirlwind, those types of jobs. But fortunately, Austin's pretty progressive. But yeah, like there's certain, like the glass jobs are definitely more male. At Honeywell, I was like in Chicago during the scientific apprenticeship, I was the only female and the only one like under 60.
What's it like going into those spaces for you?
Well, you know what to expect. You know that someone's going to put their foot in their mouth, like, I've always just been like, put your head down, and like the proof is in the pudding. Like, you just do the work and do a good job and have a good work ethic, and then the work proves itself. It's so much more satisfying to like earn someone's respect than to prove someone wrong. There were a lot of times where someone said something to me, or they would just completely ignore me or try to sabotage like my work just because of like, personal bias. But then, you just, after a time when your work prove itself, like they come around. So yeah, the jobs were like, there was older men, especially because you're not used to seeing someone that can do a lot of things like at the same time, like welding and machining, and then glass. And every now and then I would have to like be in the wood shop, so it was interesting for them, because all they've seen, at least in that workplace, was they have wives at home, and they don't expect like this 30-year-old kid to I don't necessarily consider myself a kid, but
they do when they're like 60.
To them I was, yeah. They treated me like a daughter for a long time. It was cute. But it's fun.
But I also imagine that I know, being, through my job, I interact with fabrication quite often. And so I also understand a lot of those spaces to be all white.
You know what? I didn't want to say it, but yeah.
You can say it. This is a safe space for saying
yeah. It was primarily there's definitely some Mexicans and some Filipinos and stuff up there. I live in Texas, and it's there's a certain demographic here. There's it's just inevitable. Yeah. And also like the old world thinking as well. I definitely sometimes dread going to the hardware store. But just
I feel obviously like the world I kind of orbit in is more woodworking, but also interacting with maker spaces. And I have the understanding, like, I thought there are few female woodworkers. It's not like, still, I would say we probably are like, I don't know, 30% at most. But as I've done this podcast and tried to really push into other like realms of the maker verse and getting into like the fabrication and metal world, like I really feel it's like maybe 5%. Like those spaces are still, and they feel like I really hope this doesn't come off bad, but they feel grittier is the like word I would use to like describe those spaces. Does that feel true to you? Like,
I think it depends on, again, the realm. So I've been fortunate enough to be included in the, for example, knife making world,
mhm,
and that's completely different from the blacksmithing world, and that's
mhm,
completely different from the foundry world, and etc. And then then there's just like straight up like fabrication
mhm,
like shops. So there's definitely true that it does feel like it's just 5% female
yeah.
in all of those realms. And I think now I'm just so used to it. Like I don't even like see it. But the knife maker, I was actually expecting a lot of pushback when I started making knives, and it was the complete opposite. I was experiencing nothing but support. So obviously that's like a more isolated craft, like where you're
Mhm,
just on your own working, so you're not necessarily in an environment with a bunch of other people.
right.
But it's generally I've been seeing a lot of improvement in that arena as far as like the attitude
Mm,
towards supporting more minority groups that are you know typically seen. But
mm,
I've also been in fabrication shops where like I've just I had a hard time just getting work done.
yeah.
Or they wouldn't give me a shot or anything
Mhm,
like that. But
yeah.
I think now with experience, like again, the longer you do something, people just start to like see it and recognize it, and then more opportunities come. But I don't
Do you
necessarily know.
feel like in those spaces, did you feel comfortable, like when you weren't sure about something, asking for help? Did you feel comfortable to do that in those spaces, or did you feel like you had to figure it out on your own?
Mostly I had to figure it out just to prove a point.
Mhm,
Uh, there are definitely some occasions where even, for example, like someone would say something rude to me, but like I can't say anything because then I'll be like the sensitive woman that can't handle being in the shop, right? So you just shut up and take it and you just keep working. Um, there are other occasions where I like mostly I have like someone to like be like shoot ideas with, or someone that was
mhm,
training me personally that was definitely more supportive. But I've also had instances where I see a problem with the machine, and then I even offer to fix it. I'm like, hey, here's the problem. And then I get blamed for like as if I broke it. I'm like, no, no,
right.
no. You found it like this.
Right.
And then I offer a solution and I get completely ignored. Like I don't exist. And then someone else comes up and offers the same solution I just said. And they're like, yeah, we'll do that. And I'm like, okay. Like, all right. There's always that, but I've always felt like in most of the jobs I've had like one person to like go to and
Mhm.
at least ask. But I also get really stubborn and I'm like, I'm gonna figure this out. Um, so I
Yeah.
think that helps, that attitude.
Do you find, like, are you getting, as you gain experience, do you feel like you get to a point where maybe you can be more selective in the spaces that you go into?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, like the like conditions of the world have like landed me where I am now. So I am really lucky that I have a really awesome job in a great institution that is a trade school. So the people that are there want to be there. So I love it. Like, and then I get to spend the rest of my time either, if I wanted to help fabricate somewhere I could, or I just hustle my knives and my
Mhm.
jewelry. And, but I still have that like um, semester like
Right.
paycheck coming in,
Right.
so that I don't have to really like stress out over that. But
Mhm.
I enjoy also throwing myself in new situations to see if I sink or swim. Like,
Mhm.
um, and just I also advocate like getting paid to learn. So if there's like a shop that I'm interested in, they do really great work. I'll like, hey, do you guys need holiday help? Or you guys,
Mhm.
I'll just throw myself in and see what that world is like for a while.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's always fun to get paid to learn. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's different. Like I've been fortunate to experience like the day job and consistency. And then I've also, still like the entrepreneur thing, which
Mhm.
is there's pros and cons for each. So
Yes.
it's hard either way.
Since you're doing lost uh, wax teaching,
Mhm.
casting, I'm just curious, like, what's the kind of the makeup of your students? Is it a pretty diverse group that you get to work with?
Yeah, actually it is. It's awesome people of all ages. And there's some really like great dudes in there. Primarily what I've seen is obviously like mostly women.
Mhm.
I've taught at another school here in Austin. It was creative side and now it is Be Golden Jewelry Academy School. But here at the community college, it is, yeah, a wide mix of people.
Mhm.
And they all have, I really enjoy these longer courses because I get to um, really help them find their aesthetic. I have a
Mhm.
lot more time to expose them to different options in this industry that they can take, and hoping that I can, you know, broaden the scope other than just Etsy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like just really pushing the envelope on what they can do and what avenue they want to take, because there's so many little avenues within just like the jewelry world,
Right.
that you can do.
Do you feel like you make an impact by one being like, a female instructor, and then two, like being able to say like, yeah, I do all these other things like, instead of just that.
I hope so. I really hope so. You know, I've I want to definitely inspire other people. I'm always advocating for people to get into the trades, and definitely think that there's so much value. There's a big gap there. Like, doesn't matter what's going on. Like trades aren't going to go away.
Right.
You are valuable.
Yeah.
So and I hope to inspire other people that, yeah, you're not necessarily limited to that. Like I was always told, like, no, you can't do that, or ladies shouldn't get
Mhm.
their hands dirty. Like you don't fix the car, you take the car to get fixed. And I was like, excuse me, no, like, but again, I was always like, all right, tell me what I can't do again. Like,
Yeah.
so I hope so. And there are certain, for example, my glass mentor in Chicago saw the value in that as well. And we would give demonstrations to high school
Mhm.
kids. Um, and he would always push me front and center, especially because I was a female,
Mhm.
to maybe inspire these girls and also just like teenagers in general. It's such a confusing time, that you don't necessarily have to be the doctor and the lawyer or the researcher.
Right.
You could be the person that helps the individual do the research. Like the researchers can't do their study their whatever they're doing without the blue collar people making their apparatuses for them. So it's a really nice kind of teamwork thing there. So I'm hoping that I inspire a few other people to kind of get outside their comfort zone and try
Mhm.
something.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to pivot a little bit away from like maybe more traditional trade and like fabrication into, I found you through Leah's post about being at Maker Camp.
Oh, she's so cool. I
And
love her.
getting to hang out with you. Yes, she is. And so I'm just curious, like, have you been kind of in that orbit of like the maker world for a while now? And like, what was that your first time to maker camp and stuff?
It was my first time there. I had such a great time actually meeting these people. So as far as like, I've been friends with people like Brett McAfee, and Steve Pellegrino, and a lot of the blacksmiths that showed up there. I've been,
Mhm.
um, I don't know if I like have been in any specific orbit. I've been like
Mm.
popping in and out, like I was part of like Foundry, and like I just float around. So I don't know if I really consider myself part of that world, but I've definitely been connected with those people for years online. So it was
Mhm.
such a wonderful thing to like actually meet in person and maybe show them something that they're not necessarily familiar with. And I had a really fun time, like kind of bridging the gap. So I was demonstrating glass blowing there, and I just wanted to show them like the theory is not far from blacksmithing at all.
Mm.
So I wanted to kind of bridge that gap a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. I have not been to Makers Camp yet. I think I really want to put it on the list for next year. And there was quite a few of my like favorite people there. So I definitely this year that I want to seem like it broadened a little bit than what it's been in the past. It seemed like there was a bit more, I'll just say non-male representation there. And so I feel like it'd be a little bit more welcoming. That being said, I do think maker spaces in general tend to be pretty open to almost anybody coming in who just wants to like have fun and make something.
Yeah.
Um, hey makers, today's episode is sponsored in part by toolmomstore.com. At toolmomstore.com, you can find any and all tool-based merchandise for all genders, all sizes. They've got mugs, they've got shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. I have one of the shirts myself that has the hashtag woodwork her on it. And I also have a couple of the mugs that define what and who is a tool chick. So super excited with the merchandise that I have. I know that you will be satisfied as well. And also great discount for those of you who listen to the podcast. At checkout, if you enter the code MAKERMOM, you will get a 20% discount off any of the merchandise that you buy. So that's just toolmomstore.com. All right, let's head back into the action. So I knew that you had done a demonstration. I'm just curious, had they reached out to you, or was this like you were, I'm going and why don't I do something while I'm there?
No, I was scheduled to do the glass last year.
Okay.
And we just did a virtual thing, and I ended up just doing like a stone setting demonstration because I already had access to the school and it was easier to film, right? But they were just like, are you interested in actually doing it this time? And I was like, of course. I think it was mostly through, I'm not sure if it was like Austin that found me on his own, or Chris Cash from the Axe and Iron podcast. He was following me and like started seeing like that I was, all over the place with like glass and metals and all that stuff. So they specifically are like, we have enough blacksmiths and metal people, and you do something else. I'm like, yeah. So and it's surprisingly easy just to like take a torch. I was and honestly, like for how like relatively young this event is, it's what, like the third year.
Yeah, third or fourth.
They're gonna, yeah, it's I'm sure they're gonna button stuff up, but it was impressive the amount of stuff that was out there. And definitely see, I have like all the respect for Austin. Geez, that's a lot to put on.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah,
Did you
really.
get to try anything you hadn't ever done before while there?
Mostly I was like trying to help out. The only thing I really did was help fabricate like a wick situation. They built a like, I don't know, 3-story dinosaur that they
Yeah.
burned. So they're like, we need something to like light it up. I'm like, okay. That was mostly it. I was actually hoping I didn't want to run out of oxygen, so I wasn't necessarily demoing the entire time, but I
Mhm.
had set schedules of when to demo. But mostly it was just networking and seeing all the woodworkers, and there's so much. There was like leather people there,
Mhm.
welding people, like the Lincoln Electric.
Yep.
Just like, I don't know, there was a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Um, what are you, I mean, COVID is still like a thing and it still
Mhm.
affects like work and stuff. Um,
Definitely.
but what are you kind of like, what do you have on the horizon that you're hoping to maybe either get back into or try new?
I'm really trying to push harder towards the sculpture and mixing in the glass a little bit more. I've been waiting for it to cool down here before I like turn on the torches. Because I share a shop
Mm-hmm.
and don't want to like. I mean, it's already like, in the summer it's like triple digits. So
Mm-hmm.
so I'm moving closer to that. I have a show up in Denver in mid-January. So I'm excited about making work for that. I'm gonna just try to spend as much time making a new body of work, as well as doing a production line of smaller knives, more affordable. I'm hoping to keep them in the $200 range. So I've been like working on streamlining that process while working on a few custom knives here and there. And then, yeah, just getting ready for these shows and hopefully applying to new ones. Leah and I were talking about trying to do a pop-up exhibition in the Bay Area sometime. So I'm hoping we can organize that.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be awesome to curate something like that. But yeah, trying to push back towards the art world, because I feel like I've been out of it. And honestly, like there's a lot of things about the art world that I distinctly stepped away from for a reason.
Right.
Yeah, it's frustrating. So yeah, just doing it on my own terms.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no joke. I'm not gonna lie, I have never officially like applied for a show. Um, I've looked at it, like I like it
Mhm.
occasionally, like I'll be like, okay, where's like the call for artists or any of that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I always find it intimidating. Like just the whole like juried process and all of that. And um this is still very much something that I don't get to do full time. So that also is intimidating because it's like, well, what if they say yes? Then I have to come up with like all of this work all of a sudden that I don't have just lying around my house.
I know. I
Um,
almost feel like a masochist sometimes, because I
yeah.
put myself in these situations where then I'm like freaking out and
Yeah.
having to like work. But I'm like, at the same time, like I'm like, this is what I want to be doing. I don't
Right.
know. Like there's something wrong with my brain. Um, but yeah, I also like I preempt like my students for that too. I'm like, get ready to pay for rejection. Like
Yep.
you're gonna pay that fee, submit all your stuff, work really hard on your application, and they're gonna tell you no over and over and over again. And that's fine. Sometimes, like I mentioned, that's you gotta pay your dues, and
Mm-hmm.
like they just have to see like the, the perseverance mostly. I hate the politics involved, because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of it is politics and who you know and all that. But I think that's why I enjoy doing things on my own terms. That's why I was actually part of a art collective here in Austin. They still run Icosa Collective. We did exactly that. We were just like, there's nowhere to show our work. Um, like, and we just want to run a gallery that is on our terms. So we did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I'm curious, because I run the spectrum on guests on the show, like, from everybody who's like you, who's gone to art school and like kind of been in the art world, to like me, who's like nothing to do with the art world and just like taught myself to do this stuff. Um, so I run the gamut, but I am always curious about this, social media is like a big thing now, like, and getting like discovered isn't as maybe gatekeep kept as it was before. Like,
right.
you used to only be able to like apply to be like in galleries and stuff like that. Like, you couldn't really show your work otherwise. Um,
Right.
and given that you do all these things and you show it all on, you know social media, your completed works, like,
Mhm.
where do you feel like that can give you an avenue to getting to maybe where you want to get outside of like the more traditional routes?
Absolutely. Yeah, I just like look for like resume opportunities and um, things like that. I'm not as heavily like dedicated to just showing all the time.
Hmm.
Because of that, I was like, well, like I'm the one selling work. Like, why should I give someone 50% of my
Right.
profit when
Right.
I was the one that found my client? The gallery's
Right.
job is to find the client, and then,
Right.
so there's that. I mean, obviously it's just like nice to exhibit your work
Hmm.
and have it be exposed to a new clientele, new audience, just
Hmm.
someone that it might resonate with. But yeah, I totally have been thought about that. I'm like, why don't I just like put it up and show it and see if someone wants to come see it, they can come see it in
Right.
person.
Right.
I mean, I was fortunate enough to like just go to someone's house here and install in their home.
Hmm.
It's nice. So like I'm right in town. I'll do it myself. Like I'll go over there and put it up.
Yeah, and I've had like opportunities, like there's a local realtor who, granted, she's a friend of a friend, that's how I kind of got hooked up, but she does this whole thing, like, if she has a house on the market, before it was this crazy like seller's market that it is right now, but if
Mhm.
she had a house on the market that was like kind of going stale or having like a hard time getting it to move, she would host like a gallery weekend at the house. And so like she would bring in an artist or two to like basically fill the space with whatever their artwork was. Um, and
That's
so
smart.
I know.
That's really smart.
And so it's like, but
Yeah.
it was like a win-win, right? Because it's like every time I did that, like I would sell something, somebody who came through would like buy something, and she didn't take any commission off of my work there, because the benefit was I would be telling people about like my show and they would come to see like my stuff. And but they would also see the house while they were there, you
Oh
know.
man, that's so great. I wish like all situations like should be like that, right? Like
Yeah.
win-win.
Yeah.
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 Oh, that's awesome.
But I think like, yes, she's a friend of a friend, but I don't think she would have, like, she totally stalked me on social media first before she was like willing to sit down and talk with me. And social media allowed me to basically have this continuing, ongoing virtual gallery for somebody to see all of the things that I create.
I would not be able to do what I do without social media. Absolutely. A lot of the opportunities that I've been given to are because of social media, because I have an immediate portfolio there. I remember reaching out to Neptune Glassworks, and like I was just half joking, like, hey, you guys make cool stuff. Like, you guys need a hand. And they were like, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
So, careful what you wish for.
Right.
That was like a really amazing experience for sure. Definitely learned a lot. But yeah, again, like I would not be able to. I sell directly to my clients.
Mm-hmm.
People order customs because they just kind of stumble upon what I do, and I bank on that. I bank on the fact that they're going to invest in me as an
Mm-hmm.
individual, because I know they can go to Academy and get like a $20-$40 knife.
Right.
But I do the same thing when I just like a person, on I love their personality
Mm-hmm.
and want to support them, I'm going to buy something from them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've made a very big effort this year in particular to like when birthdays or Christmas or whatever is coming up, instead of like just first instinct of going like to commercial retail, I'll be like, what makers do I know that I haven't bought something cool off of them that I like really love their work, and like how can I make that happen?
Yeah,
And like
totally.
going that route. And I mean, it's a win-win, right? For one, like usually the people I give that gift to are just like so happy that it's like I even thought that path of like something that's very individualized, like
Yeah.
to them. you know
Yeah,
um
yeah.
and then it's always somebody I've had on the podcast, so it's like I can share the whole story about this really cool person
Oh,
that
that's awesome.
that
That's
made
great.
it.
I think there's a huge shift towards that. I'm also involved with like Elk and Hammer Gallery. That's like mostly focusing on the story of the maker, right? And people are starting to really realize that there's a big shift and push in that direction, which is amazing. Because yeah, like it means so much more. I try to do the same thing, and when I can't afford them, I offer a trade.
Yep.
That's mostly like what I love doing trades.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can like really afford to collect art, because like, I mean, I can't even afford my
Yeah.
own work. So
Yeah. I definitely hear that. Yeah, no, that was one thing I learned in my first, like, when had my first interaction with the art world, the idea of like, oh, the barter system is still very much alive,
yeah,
definitely
I
in the
love
art
it.
world.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's like super exciting because it can be, I'm the same way. It's like, I value your work. Like what you make took you time and just like the things I do, but I can't afford to pay you in cash. So it's,
Right.
what can I give you that's like equivalent in time wise, like
Right.
to make
Exactly.
that
I'm
piece?
slowly collecting, it's wonderful. It's nice when they can pay, right?
Yeah.
Obviously. We all got bills. But at the same reason, right? It's like I appreciate like what the time it takes and like
Mhm.
your aesthetic and your style.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have a part of that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Absolutely.
mm,
Well, we're getting towards the end of our time together, Andrea. So I want to
that was
give
my
you a
fast.
chance. I know. I want to give you a chance to let people know, like, what you have coming up soon, and then like where they can find you and follow along with what you're up to.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I'm all over the place. I'll be doing an iron pour soon. So if you guys follow me, I'll be posting a lot of stories about that. And it's a rare thing to see. So my Instagram handle is basically my name, Andrea de Leon, with a bunch of underscores. I'm sure you'll find me.
Yes.
I know everyone, I used to be the Dre Destroyer, but I changed it and everyone's mad that I changed it. But, and then, yeah, I'll have a show up in Denver. I believe it's January 14th, but I'll be advertising about that as well. And stay tuned for the boot knives. They're going to be in the $200 range. If you guys are interested in buying a little something, yeah, I'll have a bunch of stuff for sale very soon.
Awesome. And yes, I will include the links on how to like find you.
I know. Underscore. Everyone has my name. There's like a million Andrea de Leon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. All right. So again, that was Andrea de Leon, and I will include the links on how you can follow along with her and see what she's up to in the show notes for today's episode. So where can you find those show notes? Well, first you can start by looking in the description for the episode on your podcast app. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, check the description box down below, or you can head on over to freemanfurnishings.com/podcast and find today's episode as well as all the previous episodes there. Make sure you're following along with the podcast over on Instagram at Crafting a Revolution. That is where you will see me post about new episodes. So you might want to hit that follow button as well. If you enjoyed today's episode and any previous episodes, please make sure that you subscribe, like, and follow so you get notified when new episodes are up. When I'm not making podcast episodes and getting to chat with amazing makers, you can find me designing and making furniture and other home decor at freemanfurnishings.com and at Freeman Furnishings across pretty much all the social media platforms. I'm active on a daily basis, though, over on Instagram at Freeman Furnishings and pretty close to daily over on TikTok at Freeman Furnishings. So come on over and say hi. All right, we're heading into the middle of the week. I hope you're having a great week so far. And as always, let's go craft a revolution.